Hey everybody, it's Vincent Pelligrino. I'm the director of Florida Girls at Emerald Coast Theater Company, which is going to be running on our main stage January 15th through the 31st. Today I have a very special interview with the playwright of Florida Girls, Nancy Hasty, and also the actress who plays all the parts, Marci J. Duncan. Nancy, we're so glad that you are doing the call with us. It's so rare that we actually get to speak with a playwright directly like this. So thank you so much for joining us.
Welcome. Thanks for reaching out to me.
Of course. So now Florida Girls takes place in Crestview, Florida. So how do you feel about your play being produced so close to home?
Well, I've actually performed it in my hometown a few times, as well as all over this area. So I think a lot of people are quite used to it, actually. Mm-hmm. And I must stress the loosely based.
Yes.
Underline that 3 times. But my mother always said she has such an imagination, and I let it kind of go free on this one.
So you mentioned the play is loosely based on your family, but in the script there's actually a typo where instead of the character Susie, you write the name Nancy. So I'm just wondering how much of you, Nancy, is in the character of Susie?
Well, there is a lot of me in there because I was the middle child, and I was misunderstood. I felt all the things middle children always claim, but what it turned me into was a great observer of everybody else. And I was just very quiet and shy. And, you know, we weren't allowed to use profanity, so I would walk around saying, "Gah." And that was kind of my, in that one word, you have my personality. It was true. I felt it wasn't until I got to college that I realized I could take stage. And once I found that out, I flew to New York and wrote a play about my family in my hometown.
Speaking of that, when you did it in New York City, how was it received there? How did it go there?
Well, you know, it's very interesting because New York is made up of a lot of childless, single people, people that came from all around the world, from different cultures. And I realized I was tapping into a huge population of people that missed home, missed the station wagon, missed the family, missed the generational aspect of it. They missed sometimes their country. One time I had a whole platoon of Italian people, men who were on a business trip, and they would call out, "Mama." They didn't understand a word I was saying, but when I would come out as a mother, they'd go, "Mama." So I found that sometimes home is appreciated most when you're not there. And I wrote it because I was homesick.
Wow. So when you wrote it, you were living in New York City?
Yes. Started with a short story, and the response was very strong. So then I was going to refine the short story, but I seemed to write in dialogue. Even my letters would be, and then so-and-so said this, and so-and-so. I just write naturally as dialogue. And then it became a play. It was very interesting.
I wanted to ask you about your writing style. I mean, logistically speaking, it's basically a 2-act monologue, so it's just, you know, the same. Right. But the way that you write it is very much written like that of a traditional play where you would have all the characters cast. You even have all the blocking written in as to what they would be doing if they were actually there. It's a huge challenge for both the actor and the director because the actress has to maintain who she's talking to, who she is, and where the people are, and the director is also trying to think about where the people are in the space. From a directorial standpoint, how did you accomplish it when you produced it, and did you have a director work with you?
Not originally, because it was just me, and I would work on it at my writer's workshop in New York, and I just found that I think the closest thing to it is years ago I had seen Richard Pryor do a vignette of people watching a car wreck. And he just went from one to the other just changing a little bit of his stance. And all of a sudden, he had quite a few people out there, and I could keep them straight, which was very inspiring. And also, just when you were talking about you have to remember where they are, you also have to remember how tall they are.
Yeah.
And you're looking at them. That's when the director really comes in handy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Your younger sister just grew 4 feet. In my family, if you were telling a story around the dinner table and somebody started telling it over you, you might get out of your chair and start acting it out a little bit to keep the attention on you. So it's kind of like that. It's almost like you're popping up over here, and you don't have to move, really. You just have to turn your head. And if you have an identifying gesture, it really helps to keep it clear.
Yeah, that's something that we've definitely tried to find in rehearsal. Marci, did you have a question about that?
As I'm exploring it and the beautiful storytelling that it is, I just kind of wanted to ask how you were able to perform it yourself. You know, was the staging like less is more like a chair, and then you just kind of like what you described a few seconds ago with you just kind of using the gestures and different identifiable factors. So that's what I was kind of curious about, how you performed it.
Exactly, Marci. And if you turn your head and you turn back as someone else, that's very helpful too.
Yeah.
I used one chair, and it became the car, the pulpit, the dinner table, the, the easy chair, everything. And less is definitely more in this. And at one point, I had several productions of it in New York. And at one point, somebody wanted to get really fancy with maybe slides or something, you know, a big set. And I remember people said, no, I have my own imagination of what these people look like. And I do not want anybody interfering with that. This is my world. And if you bring that in, we did have, which I always love, the lights at the end of the play and the dark sky, and then the stars came out while Perry Como was singing Catch a Falling Star. And so with just something very slight like that, it carries a big wallop if you haven't used a whole lot prior to that.
Right.
And I never like to have blackouts. When I was doing it on a big stage, I really like to have the lights shift and I walked into the next scene. So I tried to keep it fluid.
You're making me nervous, Nancy, because I'm doing some of these things. I might be doing some of these things that you don't like.
The joy is finding out what you would do with it, don't you?
That's a wonderful way to put it. What a wonderful way to put it.
You were asking what I did. I performed this play all over the country, and I performed in the West Coast, and I was in one town where they wanted me to perform, but they didn't really have lighting, and as I started down the aisle, they would plug in the light. So I had to get very flexible.
Yes.
And I did it all kinds of ways, and that was one of my favorite shows because it was just intimate and primal.
One of the things that we're doing is there's a couple of found props on the stage. The setting is like the front yard of the house. She's using like a hose as the microphone for the beauty pageant, but then it also becomes grandmother's antenna, and it's just sort of like these found props. So it is simplistic, but we are doing it a little more realized than just a chair.
That's fine. Yeah. I think that's exciting. Where are you both rehearsing?
Marci's in Pensacola, and I'm in Miramar Beach. So we've actually been rehearsing virtually over Zoom, and Marci has the blessing of her classroom at UWF. So she sets up the set, how it will be over there, and I sit on the computer here.
He watches me. Yeah.
Wow. Don't tell me people don't have ingenuity.
I wanted to ask you, Nancy, since this is loosely based on how you were raised as a white woman growing up in the South, what are some of the implications you feel about casting a black woman in the role? And do you think that the themes of the story are universal enough to transcend any racial barriers?
Well, I would certainly hope so, because there's always family. You go, oh no, they're pulling in the driveway. That's one.
Yes.
And there's always the hierarchy of family and the birth order. It seems like women still do the work of the world, and that's certainly true in the play. And there are moments, sometimes of great bliss, tooling along, singing together in a station wagon.
I love the theme of the play that, I guess the theme that we take away is, when does a person become an adult?
Very nice, Vincent.
What I take away from that is Susie becomes an adult because she goes on this amazing adventure to rescue grandmother from ruining the day. And Doreen also has a little moment where she stands up to her mother and kind of asserts herself. So are we on the right track with that theme?
I think you are very thoughtful and very insightful. That's what I think. I think one of the great contrasts or challenges of being brought up Southern is my grandmother's religion said you can't show your legs, and yet the South is known for majorettes and beauty contests and bathing suits. So go figure. And that was very confusing to me as a child when they came together that way. And so the whole thing of the female aspect of what am I supposed to be when I do grow up?
Yeah.
I want to be nice. I want to be good. I also want to win something at some point. So that's a part of the play too.
It's sort of this great dichotomy that you have to be very conservative and very subdued, and yet it was big hair and big makeup and all of that. So that must have been very confusing to grow up in.
It was. And, I'm just in awe that today girls are athletes and women are astronauts. I mean, that was not that was so far. We did home ec and we were in beauty contests. And then we listened to the boys talk or cheered them on. And that was another aspect of growing up in the 60s.
It had to be so interesting among the reasons you named, but also to watch your mother kind of like run that house.
Yes.
And run everything, and everything was done, and everything was always taken care of. And she did that, and then to think, wow, but we're supposed to not speak out loud. We're supposed to not pursue our dreams. Like, that is so confusing.
Yes, and they should be quiet in the church.
Right. I will say, when I read this script, even from the first monologue, I identified so much with these characters because they were in my family. My mother, was very much like Doreen. And my grandmother was very much like the grandmother. So much so that she did not want me to prop my legs up on the second little pier on a chair. You know how the chair like taps the ground and then you have that little bar that you can kind of put your foot on? She thought that was just, don't hike your leg up like that. That is not holy.
Hike is the operative word.
So it was very, very relatable. I mean, and I'm from Florida, born and raised in Florida. So
where?
Tallahassee. I lived in Tallahassee, grew up in Tallahassee, but I was born in West Palm Beach, Florida. But we moved to Tallahassee, and I grew up in Tallahassee.
Okay, you're a Southern Tallahassee lassie, is what you are.
She is a Florida girl.
Yes.
I am a Florida girl, and I
Florida
wear it
girl.
proudly.
Yeah, me too, Marci. Me too. Well, how do you like the ministry?
Oh, I was actually just going to ask about that, because one of the things that that Marci kind of mined from the text was that how much he talks about how young the girls are. We were just wondering if that was if we should play that up, if that's intentional.
Y'all were uncovering things that I had no knowledge of.
Well, what's interesting, Nancy, is play does translate to today, but now today we look at things through such a different lens.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. We do indeed.
Is that part of the hypocrisy of the minister, that maybe he...
Well, I love that you're going down that road, Vincent. I do, because I just remember being scared to death. That was my memory. And I made the sermon up, but I heard one when my grandmother took me to her church that I couldn't sleep for like a year after. I was so terrified. So, so let's throw that in the mix too. It's fine.
Well, I tell you, I am freed. I am so freed to have so much fun, because this is such a wonderful script, and it really gives me permission to just have a wonderful time on stage. And
I'm so glad.
That's what I want to do.
That makes me so happy. It was meant to be.
It was meant to be.
It's been a really fun project to work on. I'm a newer director, and I feel like I'm learning a lot from working with Marci. So
this just warms my heart, because the theater should be wonderful and fun and creative and imaginative, and there are times when it's not, and that makes me very sad. So this is a real wonderful gift that you're giving me.
Good.
That's amazing.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. Florida Girls runs at Emerald Coast Theater Company January 15th through the 31st, so make sure you get your tickets. You can get more information and tickets online at www.emeraldcoasttheater.org.